Chapter 17. The Inquisitor's Library. Standing casually with his hands in his pockets, Requiem stood back and observed his friends talking over one another as they unbottled the excitement of their trials and tribulations. He had thought they would burn out of energy and things to say before long, but as he stood there, he was finding it hard to see an end to the stories of friendly nightmares, fearsome fractals, and a guild of immortals. Coughing, Requiem interrupted. I know that you're all sharing a very special moment, but I don't suppose that book has any information on what room to ask for. Immediately, Urasil came out of his swinging pose and went to pull out the book. Ah, yes, sorry, he said, rummaging around his bottomless pocket. But you should have seen the belter I hit just before being moved here. Requiem looked down his nose at Urasil with a furrowed brow. Urasil's enthusiasm quickly turned to sheepishness. Clearing his throat weakly, he opened the book. We'll find no solace here, I'm afraid. It's still suffering from literary diarrhea, sighed Urasil, as he flicked the pages that continued to rewrite themselves in a blur. How about asking one of them? Asked Gio innocently, pointing to the front desk. Standing behind it were two slim, tanned, blonde girls in bright blue futuristic-looking uniforms. Standing several metres apart, they seemed unconcerned with the arrival of their guests, as they busied themselves with something out of view behind the desk. I'll go and ask, shall I? Gio's glee was all too apparent as he started to turn in the girl's direction. Before Gio's foot could reach the floor, Freya grabbed him by the collar and pulled him back. Hold it, Casanova. Your encounters with women on this journey have gotten us into enough trouble, thank you very much. Oh, I don't know, purred a deep, velvety voice from above. Everyone felt a cold rush of adrenaline course through their veins as they looked up to see Libitina on the staircase. This time, dressed in a revealing black lace outfit, she bewitched the boys once again as she sauntered slowly down the marble stairs. What the hell are you doing here? Demanded Freya, tightening her grip on Gio and almost choking him in the process. With a mischievous smile, Libitina answered, I promised Gio that we'd meet again, didn't I, sweet Gio? Requiem looked at Gio with daggers and mouthed the words, I'm going to kill you. By the time Libitina reached the foot of the stairs, Urasil had managed to shake himself out of his fantasy. How did you get here? He asked loftily, still not entirely released from Libitina's spell. With an airy sigh, Libitina walked seductively over to Urasil. Running her hand down the side of his cheek and under his chin, she took great pleasure in the combination of ecstasy, fright, and confusion on Urasil's face. She leaned over to whisper in his ear. Some say music is the food of love. Those fools, they don't understand the true power of notes, the energy, the harmonics, the resonance. Taking Urasil's hand and holding it against her exposed chest, Libitina breathed heavily and looked aloft. The harp. It lets my spirit soar. Bringing her head down to look sternly into Urasil's eyes, she added a single unsettling word. Literally. Urasil's chin remained in Libitina's elegant grasp as she ran his hand down her chest to her navel before casting it away, forcing an uneasy gulp from him before he tried to speak with some coherence. So, we're addressing just your spirit, are we? Libitina laughed, flinging Urasil back gently as she began to walk the room. You're so formal, Grandmaster Urasil. However, in your probing for knowledge, I will tell you. My spirit rode the notes all the way to the meeting of friends in a library as they made their pact to help clear poor Requiem's clouded mind. It floated so quietly and slipped in and out of the pages whilst the book told Grandmaster how to attain his deepest desires. Requiem interrupted Libitina's poetic rhetoric. So, you read the book whilst it was telling Urasil the library's whereabouts, and the harp is no doubt some kind of stealthy teleport medium of yours. That still doesn't explain how you got this far. After all, I doubt this Inquisitor would like his knowledge to be used by someone of your ilk. Libitina brought her elegant meandering to a graceful halt. Standing tall, she turned to Requiem with a look of marked displeasure. "And what makes you think that he'll let you reach his hallowed vaults, my brethren?" Outburst over, Libitina regained her composure and floated seductively towards Gio. "But there must be balance, isn't that right, sweet Gio? So the righteous have the Avatar's Guild, and those deemed a little, wayward, shall we say. We have the Black Guild." Freya took a sharp intake of breath, and Libitina turned to look at her with contempt. "What? You didn't think Odin was given growth hormones as a pup, did you? Besides, if we didn't have something to counteract these infernal do-gooding cats and lizards, the entire Akatsuki race would end up looking as plain as you." "Now, hang on," shouted Urisul boldly, protective of Freya no matter what the risk. "Yes, that's quite enough, Libitina," interjected Requiem in an effort to divert Libitina's attention towards him. "Freya is every bit the siren you are." Before Requiem could add another word, Freya burst out, "Yeah, but with a punch," and landed her fist squarely on the side of Libitina's jaw, sending her foe crashing into a heap in front of the desk. Gio looked at Freya in awe, Urisul in elation, whilst Requiem was simply stunned into silence. Chuckling and wiping a trickle of blood from her mouth, Libitina rose purposely from the ground. It looks like I have a fight on my hands, and there was me thinking this would be a walkover. You see, as this place is controlled by an immortal of the Avatar's Guild, the dratted thing has prevented me from going any further. I've been wandering the halls of this hotel for days. It had got to the point where I'd started to think about escaping, rather than finding this stupid library. But then I was presented with an offer. Every one of Libitina's mannerisms and tones contained both grace and seduction. This allowed her to instill a fear that was almost beguiling. As she walked towards Gio and Urisul, their heads became a whirl of fear and desire, leaving them weak at the knees and sapped of fight. They backed their way towards Freya, whose building rage at both Libitina's tactics and Gio's and Urisul's total surrender was reaching boiling point. No one could ever predict Requiem's reaction to something. He was simply unique in how he viewed the world. For reasons best known to himself, he simply stood to one side, hands still in his pockets, watching the scene develop. The fear that Libitina was trying to engender was lost on Requiem. He was more interested in what she had to say. "Go on," Requiem said calmly. "What kind of an offer did this Avatar give you?" Without breaking stride, Libitina answered Requiem with a sinister smile. "If I beat you, then I can go to the library. After all, the weakness of the Avatar's Guild is that they will help all Akatsuki, even us rotten ones from time to time." Freya dismissed her. "Just come over here and let me really punch you, so we can be moving on." Backing away ever so slightly, Requiem looked at his friends. Freya, you do know that the name Libitina means Goddess of Death, right?" Freya's confidence turned to concern, and she slowly lowered her hands from her boxing stance, able only to utter a single word. "Oh." In a luscious, velvety voice, Libitina chuckled. "Let's begin, shall we?" Freya, Urisul and Gio huddled closer together. Gio took a martial arts stance, and Urisul had his own unique style. Unperturbed, Libitina continued her slow advance. By now, Freya had succumbed and was totally transfixed by Libitina, along with Gio and Urisul. The two girls behind the reception desk finished what they had been working on, and sprang up onto the desk, each holding a huge dark green cannon glowing with energy, humming loudly as they charged. Seeing that she was no longer the centre of attention, Libitina gave a cruel smile. A gift from the Black Guild. They're the Injustice twins. With the element of surprise well and truly in their favour, the twins released a volley of plasma energy upon their confused opponents. Streaking either side of an unflinching Libertina, the plasma hurtled towards Freya and the others, culminating in a loud and vivid explosion, with clouds of dust as marble and masonry were obliterated. When the air cleared, Libertina's eyes widened with disgust as she saw Urasil, half crouching, with his arms spread wide, holding a large ball of plasma in each hand. Geo beamed a smile of relief and respect down at Urasil. "Good going. You know, for a skinny runt, you're pretty sturdy." "Thank you," Urasil replied. "I shall take that as a compliment, but any more and I'll let the next shot hit you and see how sturdy you are. Here, catch." Urasil threw Geo a plasma ball. "All right," cried Geo gleefully as he played with his energy, turning it into a ping-pong bat and a pyramid of small plasma balls. Urasil split the remaining ball of energy, giving half to Freya, who made a golden gauntlet with spiked knuckles. As she slipped it over her left hand, she looked over to Libertina with a dark smile. "Just let me get close, that's all I ask." Realising that now wasn't the time to disagree with Freya, Urasil made a shield of fire. "Stand behind me. I'll deflect the shots while Geo keeps them busy. Between us, we'll get you close enough." There was something not quite right. In all the activity, everyone had forgotten about Requiem. "Again!" demanded Libertina to the twins. "Only this time harder!" Nothing happened. "Twins!" raged Libertina. Libertina noticed that Geo and the others had rather blank expressions on their faces. This was not the fear she was used to seeing at these moments, and she turned to look at the twins. To their credit, they had shot off many other volleys, but none of them had made it very far. Instead, the balls of energy were floating in the air just behind Libertina's head, held by a translucent rippling force field, with the twins floating helplessly in amongst them, too afraid to speak. Requiem, who had been standing to one side the whole time, was casually holding the force field in place with one hand. Turning to Libertina, he spoke firmly, yet politely. "I think it's time to leave, don't you?" Libertina dismissed Requiem. "Ha! I can fend off your parlour tricks. Go on, unleash the energy." "Oh, I'm not going to attack you. After all, you are a member of the South Gate, and it would not do for us to turn on one another." "You're weak, Requiem." Thrusting out her hand, she pointed to the others. "It's living with these simpletons." "Oh, you're so wrong. If it weren't for what I've gained from my friends, I would have killed you before you got down the stairs. Instead, I choose to educate you." "Don't patronise me," spat Libertina, as her calm demeanour ebbed away. "As you wish," replied Requiem airily, and he released the force field. The twins fell to the ground screaming, expecting to be pounded by plasma. Pushing themselves up from the ground and blowing away their golden locks, they stared timidly at the plasma to watch it streak towards Libertina, who stood firm and defiant as the balls shot past her to blow a hole in the wall. Libertina was too wise to mock Requiem further, for she doubted he had missed. As she stared at the hole, she pondered whether this was a gesture by Requiem to allow her to escape. If so, she would not be so weak as to take it. Libertina did not get long to ponder what twisted fate Requiem had in store for her as, from the dust, a large humanoid shape began to come into view. This was accompanied by a pungent smell and a loud hiss coming from the hole. "Meet Devastator," Requiem said cheerily, as he bounced on the balls of his feet with his hands once again in his pockets. "An immortal of the Avatars Guild, whose duty it is to put wayward Akatsuki back in line." Libertina looked shocked. Her eyes were wide and her mouth slightly open, as if to speak, but her breath had been stolen by fear. Devastator was all too well known in the circles Libertina travelled in, and just his name was enough to send a shiver down her spine. Coming face to face with the Avatar of Punishment was too much even for the Goddess of Death. "See, I told you this would be educational. This is only the beginning. I think I'll let Devastator continue the lesson." Turning to the immense Avatar, Requiem called out, "She's all yours. Bit of a bad egg by all accounts. She was calling Freya names. Very catty." Libertina fled for the stairs. As she reached the first step, A growl caused her to look up and think again. Havoc, also in humanised form, was standing midway up the stairs, his arms folded, baring his teeth. Libertina turned and ran for doors at the opposite side. Turning to get away from Pathfinder, who had appeared to block the way to the doors, Libertina slipped. All her elegance and coquettishness had gone. She just looked frightened and alone. Trapped, Libertina span, hunting for a way out, as Devastator whipped his tail out from the darkness, bringing her down to her knees. The rubble on the floor trembled with every step Devastator took. To Libertina it was the sound of impending doom. Her beautiful tan skin turned white as Devastator grabbed her by the ankle and dragged her screaming through the hole and into the darkness. "And I was so looking forward to slapping her with this thing too," said Freya as she looked longingly at her gauntlet. "I don't know about you, but I don't intend all this fine workmanship to go to waste," said Geo slyly, looking at the twins, who were pulling on the desk to heave themselves to their feet. Geo picked up a mini plasma ball and sent it flying with a bat at one of the twins, who yelped in fright as it seared a hole in the desk next to her head, singeing her smooth golden hair. "How come you never hit like that when you were playing us?" asked Freya. "You weren't holding back, were you?" "Never mind that, my dear. Let's have at them," called Urasil. He charged down the twins, with Freya running behind him, winding up for a punch as Geo peppered the reception with plasma. The twins had few choices now that their toys had been destroyed by the four, with each being as unenviable as the next. Either face a gauntlet punch from Freya, take on an avatar, or chase after Libertina. Looking into one another's eyes, the twins silently agreed that the unknown of the darkness had the least certainty, and thus the most opportunity, and fled through the only available exit, the hole that Libertina had just been dragged through. The group walked to the middle of the room as they laughed at the retreating twins. Calling out to the remaining avatars, Freya beckoned them over eagerly. "Havoc! Pathfinder! Come over here and say hi!" "Another time, perhaps. Now we must go," replied Havoc, as he turned his back on the group and walked away. "But," called Freya sadly, reaching out for Havoc. "You're safely on the right path. You don't need us for the final leg," added Pathfinder reassuringly, before he too turned and disappeared. "Oh." Freya's disappointment was clear to see as she dropped her hand and her smile. "Don't worry," said Urasil cheerily. "I have Havoc's string here. I'll call him back." Raising his finger, Requiem spoke. "Wait." Geo scooped Freya and Urasil up in his arms, squeezing them tightly. "Geo!" winced Freya. "What are you doing?" "Whenever Requiem does that finger pointing, look around thoughtfully thing, something bad happens. I'm just bracing us for it." "Good call," said Requiem, as he rushed to join the embrace and pushed everyone's heads down. Geo was right to act, as cracks streaked from the hole that Requiem had made. This was swiftly followed by falling bricks as the hole rapidly widened. Cracks shot across the ceiling, sending large chunks of plaster crashing down around them, buffeting the group as Geo took the blows. Geo raised his head momentarily to see that things were about to get a whole lot worse. The stairs, curving to the left of the reception desk, collapsed, turning to dust. This set off a domino effect, as pillars began to fall into one another, splintering doors and flattening the plush red chairs. Since the twins' departure, Urasil had miniaturized his fire shield and was clenching it in his palm. Fearing that, strong though he was, even Geo wasn't going to be able to withstand a pillar crashing onto him, Urasil tried to push his hand out above the group. He singed Geo as he did so, making him yelp. Loosening his grip, Geo looked angrily at Urasil. "What was that?" he snapped. "Don't you think this is dangerous enough without you trying to set light to my chest hair?" "Really, you can be such a baby at times. Now make room," retorted Urasil. Everyone shuffled and held themselves in so that Urasil could free his arm, and not a moment too soon. The remainder of the ceiling came thundering down upon them as the last flight of stairs collapsed, and shards of marble and wood flew at them from every direction. Urasil opened his palm and expanded the shield into a thin dome of fire, just stretching over Geo's broad shoulders. As the debris made impact, it was immediately disintegrated, its energy going back into making the shield stronger.